In a world full of rush, pause for a drink. Pure, clear, and fresh. Let your mind think. In every sip of one in eight alkaline, you'll find a taste so pure, refreshes the mind. With a 9.5 pH, it's balanced just right. Electrolytes to keep you bright. Potassium fuels your everyday, keeps you glowing in every way. Drink water and mind your business until it's time to stand on it. One in eight alkaline, the water that keeps you glowing. Let's glow.
Peace, 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 and good morning. Good morning to all. We are here on another Saturday. My phone is going haywire, but I hope everybody has had a great week and is off to a good start. I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. I'm just trying to give a second to let everybody come in. So, peace and good morning. Let me get this posted. There we go. There we go. We do that. All right, now we're ready. So, uh, as always, I welcome everybody. Thank you for joining in this Saturday morning. It's a lot going on. It's just been a full week, as you saw the commercial for the 1NA alkaline water. Please support Million the Poet, my man A. Zachary Shepard, holding it down with the 1 in a million alkaline water. It's good water. But a lot going on. I had a lot going on personally, vocationally, the season of transition. And then as you see, I'm wearing an old like family reunion shirt because that's also going on this weekend. So great to see some family and share some time. So we got some things going on today as well. So I'm gonna be on the move. I won't be before you too long today. We're gonna touch on a couple of things that we've spoken to before, just around the world. But last week, and I didn't come on Saturday. I was traveling. That I wanted to touch on something that happened last Friday, but we'll touch on a little bit today, and I may even have a guest to speak to it. And that was just the peace agreement that was signed between the Congo and Rwanda. Maybe touch on some history, just kind of look at it global sense, because we know there's been a global crisis going on around the world, dealing with that conflict that kind of rolls up again in the past year of 2023 and up until now. And they finally reached some agreements. We know the conflict is still going on in the Sudan. So send your prayers, your thoughts, your meditations, your ashes, whatever have you, to those suffering. We know we still have the conflict over in Gaza and the West Bank. Where people are hungry, suffering. So please lift up all those who are dealing with hurt, suffering, pain, and let's hope to find peace. And that's what I will kind of discuss too when I put on my pastoral hat. But and then let me give a shout out to our book of June, of Water and the Spirit, just to give it a last shout out. And I'll post these books on the IG page and everything, and Facebook. But I will introduce a new book. This is one that I actually read for a course doing my graduate studies at Duke. Um, Great course, and it's a great book. But I want to share it, as a resource that may inspire folks who may be tuning in, that are starting new uh, projects, new businesses, new whatever, or you help with certain agencies or companies, and you're doing community-based work, or you're doing even private sector. But I'm hoping this book, if you hadn't had a chance to read it, it'll inspire you. It's not a long read, but it's a good read. So with that, I'm gonna stop talking, and I don't know if I mentioned I may have a special guest pop in to discuss some of those international uh, things we discussed. But on that note, once again, I appreciate you joining. I thank you. It's a beautiful Saturday, and let's go ahead and get to it. All right. Shout out to all my folks on IG. I see my man A Zachary. Hey, you see it, bro. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. Uh, so, and hope Instagram is where it looks like it might be a little frozen, but we'll see. I don't know. It might be something my computer or something, but I hope everybody on IG is watching and can see me well. Um, it looks frozen on my end, and my apologies. I don't know what's going on with that, but we gonna keep it moving. So, kind of want to reflect back just to start. And I don't know, for those that may not have joined us on the Wednesday Wisdom, I kind of reflected on an event that took place this past Tuesday in Greensboro, and I want to lift it up. I get the band on, you might not can read it, but it's Greensboro Peace on Purpose. So the city of Greensboro, along with the police department and several organizers or activists in the communities and those that have specific programs working in the community in connection or network with the city, held a rally in the Center City Park to denounce gun violence because we had an incident of gun violence during the Fun Fourth events or activities that take place every year downtown, where I believe those two individuals were shot. I don't think there were any deaths, but I don't have the full information on everything, or won't go into it. I don't have all the specifics, but um, I was actually out of town. But like I said, I saw certain news reports and certain people had posted on social media. But it was a quick response to a situation to bring out community leaders, just to let people know of the things that's out there. Because many times, for whatever reason, we may not know what all resources are available, what programs are there to support families, to support kids, to address these things. But it also was great to see all those factors coming together in unity to share one message for an issue that has risen in the past decade that we need to really address. And the other part of that is that we see many of those in the midst of these acts, or either victimized by these acts, seem to be getting younger. So there's things we have to do just to reconnect with the community and young people and just conflict resolution. And we have to build on these things and build these networks so that, we can draw people in so that we can try to deter these acts, or, if there are networks out there, we can work with finding solutions. So just wanted to lift that up again this morning because, in the midst of everything, we're trying to focus on peace. Blessed are the peacemakers. So in that, shout out to all those individuals that made it happen. Want to put on the pastoral hat for just a brief moment and lift up some things. I'm gonna refresh this Instagram. I don't know what's going on. Uh-oh. We might have lost it. So y'all hold tight. We're going to figure it out. There we go. There we go. It looks like we're fresh. All right. So, as I said, we want to focus on peace a little bit, and shout out to everybody who may be on Facebook. I got the chat ready. Give me a shout out in the chat. Let me know you there. Matter of fact, I need to be remembering to do this. You see it where you can connect with us on IG, our email, Facebook. Please reach out and connect with us. But also shout us out in the chat. So, just briefly want to put the pastoral hat, because when we look at peace, right? Peace comes from a mindset, and it's not to say that people won't be put in situations where they have to defend themselves or do things, right? I don't want to act like our head is buried in the sand or whatever. We don't know. Sometimes things happen, right? Situations we can't foresee or predict. But also, as those who proclaim a faith or a spiritual walk, we have to be consistently spreading the word of peace and sharing the thought of peace, right? And we have to continue to share this message, right? And there are some that may be pushed at times to those things. I won't say that I haven't lost my temperament in things, but the ultimate, I guess, focus for myself is that, everyone is safe, everyone is all right. Even if we have a disagreement, I never want to get to the point where I want to see harm to anyone. And I think if we stay steadfast in that, right, we'll break down steadfast. No matter what type of situation we get in, if we're steadfastly having our mind set on that, we will know that the ultimate goal is resolution or peace, or that everyone is safe or not harmed, right? So that's what I'm sharing in my pastoral hat. So let me go to scripture. I'm gonna go one Old Testament, and then I'm gonna go one from the gospel, just to share with everybody. And I didn't put it in the things, but I'm gonna say it a couple times so you can catch it. Let me do my Dr. Umar real quick. Shout out to him, and say it 3 times. Isaiah 26:3. Isaiah chapter 26:3. Isaiah chapter 26:3. And it states, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." All right. If we recognize the higher power, the creator, right? This is Isaiah speaking to God and about how God will keep you in peace as long as your mind is steadfast on it. So it's not to say we don't get frazzled, not to say we can't get thrown off our game, but if our ultimate destination is peace, then even in those moments, we are able to collect ourselves, or we understand that there's a certain level that things should escalate to, right? If we're not steadfast on peace, it's the end goal of everything, end goal, right? Then we can let those temptations take us to a place where we resort to violence or harsh words or threats or whatever, right? It can take us to a place outside of ourselves. So we have to remember that it's not to say that we won't have those moments, but if we are understanding that ultimately we don't want harm on anyone, or we want to make sure that everyone is safe or unhurt, right? Then there's only a certain level that we will let things escalate to. Even if we don't resolve it, then we know that there is a a limit to where we will let it escalate. So I want to set that foundationally, right? And this is the message we have to share. We teach to our young folks, right? Right? There may be tests, there may be situations we can't avoid. But if we're set on peace, then we can kind of deter those things sometimes, or hopefully avoid that energy, right? That leads to that. So that brings me to John chapter 16, verse 33, I'm sorry. John chapter 16, verse 33. John chapter 16, verse 33, right? And it says, I have said this to you so that in me you may have peace. Now, I claim to be a follower of Christ, so I take this to heart. So I'm going to start it again. And for those that follow Christ or want to be Christ-like or understand the mission to be like Christ or to be in that higher level in the divine mind, right? Because you won't assume everybody practices one faith, but we're in that divine mind, right? My faith, right? That of Christ, right? Verse 33 says again, I have said to you so that in me you may have peace. In the world you face persecution, but take courage. I have conquered the world. So I wanted to bring that forth. Just number one, right? In our spiritual walk, right? We follow Christ. We have to take on that mind of Christ. That's what the scriptures say, right? So in Christ, we find that peace because now we have transcended, right? That earthly mind, that mind of the flesh. We kind of talked about that on Wednesday, but we have transcended that so that we take courage in knowing that Christ conquered that so that we can continue to transcend that or not have fear, or we find strength in the time of persecution, right? Because we know there will be challenges. There will be things that try to throw you off your path, right? But if we stay in that divine mind, set on peace, steadfast, and let me say, steadfast means unwavering, firm, right? And an understanding and a point of view, right? You're steadfast, unmoving, unwavering, right? So we become that, right? So the goal is to become that of that same mind, that divine mind, that one set on peace, so that we can be those called to serve Christ's message of peace that we find in the good news. All right. Amen. We're gonna close that. So just wanted to throw that out there before we get into these other talks about some of the things going on around the world. And just to give an update, I know on Wednesday we kind of talked about catastrophe that has happened down in Texas with the floods, and we had flooding in North Carolina. I need to get some more statistics and updates on that. But I know this one has taken the news by storm, and we know that they've confirmed over 100 deaths. There's still 100 plus people that are missing down there. So we continue to pray for them because they may have been hit the hardest, right? But we know there are people all around who are dealing with loss and damages and everything during this time. So we lift them up, we pray for them, and we place them in the Creator's hands, right? That they find strength in this moment. We know it's difficult, right? So with that said, let me see if my brother he ain't in the studio yet, so we'll keep it moving. So wanted to kind of give some updates. My apologies. I was supposed to do this to open the show. So on Wednesday Wisdom, I had posted or displayed a flyer for a special guest we got coming that is supposed to be that we said was coming on in a couple of weeks in July, but we're actually moving the date back a little bit. So let me share this. Let me share this with you. For those that don't know, and as you know, I am hip hop, right? It's the era I grew up. The message in the music. I ain't talking about the stuff now, but there's still some good folks. I'm not hating, but that era guided me, taught me a lot of things, and so we want to do certain things for the culture. So if you join us on Wednesday Wisdom, you might have seen this. But if this is your first time, right, on August 6th, right, the first Wednesday in August, we will have none other than Technician, the DJ. And for those that may not know, and for those that do, Technician currently is the DJ for the likes of Rakim, Ghostface Killer, Raekwon, Fat Joe. He's on Rock the Bells Radio. If you watched the Versus battle when we were kind of locked in during COVID, he DJ'd the Versus between, he DJ'd the Versus with Ghostface and Raekwon. The Chef, he DJ'd the Versus between Ja Rule and Fat Joe. He was the DJ for Fat Joe. And then he was the DJ for the Locks during the battle between them and the Dipset, where you had the infamous line where Jadakiss said, "Technician, let's make something happen," right? So go back, check it out, and see it. But we have none other than Technician, the DJ, who will actually be joining us on August 6th on our Wednesday Wisdom. So for those that love the culture, love the hip hop, make sure you mark that on your calendar. But we'll continue to send the updates and flyers. But I wanted to make sure I got that out because I know on Wednesday we were thinking July 23rd, but we're gonna move it back a little bit for scheduling purposes. All right, so I think my brother is in the building. I'm gonna bring him on, but just to kind of pre-seg it. Right, we know of the various conflicts that are going on around the world, and we've been able to highlight a couple, like, well, all of the major ones that are going on. Major, I don't know how to say it, but work with me, right? But we were able to highlight some of the statistics from the conflict in Sudan. We were able to talk about those in the Democratic Republic of Congo and that conflict with Rwanda. We talked about the conflict in the Middle East, right? Or Gaza in the West Bank. But recently, last Friday, I believe, the 27th, 2 weeks ago. I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago. We came on the 28th, but it was fresh, so I didn't get a chance to highlight it. And I wanted to talk about it last Saturday, but I was on vacation. But 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, there was a resolution, a peace resolution agreed to between Rwanda and the Congo. So kind of want to talk about that. And to talk about it, I'm bringing on my brother who is doing graduate work in international education. And he is the Piedmont, North Carolina liaison for Black professionals in international affairs and the North Carolina Consortium of International Education, the Model UN, Model United Nations Steering Committee member. And that is none other than Brother Will Mackey. What's going on, Brother Mackey?
Hey Ben, how you doing? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, brother. You sound loud and clear. You sound loud
Hey,
and clear, brother.
more importantly, thank you for that great introduction. More importantly, it's an honor to be on the live from the Resource Center team
No
of,
doubt.
one of America's most cutting edge shows. So thank you for having me on.
No doubt. And also he is, let me put it up here so they can see. Brother Mackey is the CEO of Biographies, Books, and TV, and also a producer of Live from the Resource Center podcast. So, Brother Mackey, I had some information, but I'm gonna let you flow if you want to kind of take it where you want to, speaking historically or what you feel, wherever you feel the spirit leads you. But yes, an agreement was signed on June 27, right? Ceasing hostilities. They were supposed to agree on respecting territory. Um there's supposed to be a joint security coordination, and there's supposed to be an economic uh, infrastructure or integration, right? Uh, where the U.S. is going to be able to invest, right, in the DRC. But we won't go there just yet. Um, but there's supposed to be maybe some increased trade and stuff to help benefit the DRC that comes out of this, and hopefully some more aid can get through. But there's a certain dynamic, and we'll talk to it. But let me just get you generally what are your thoughts on that situation, or what you know of that situation?
I mean, first of all, shout out to you for lifting up the issue. What I found I worked for 9 years for the Phelps Stokes Fund, who was a global NGO. Well, NGO means global. For those who may not know what that acronym means, it's non-governmental organizations. So when you go into the DC Beltway, which is a different universe, you find all of these uh, stateside uh, think tanks and policy institutes, but you also find a multitude of NGOs. These are entities that go around the world promoting American ideals and sometimes providing aid, most notably USAID, which we know was cut under the Doge cuts. So I applaud you for lifting up the issue because since the days of Marcus Garvey, uh, African Americans in particular, we are the embodiment of international trade. You won't find a lot of policy analysts that'll start with that, but it was called the transatlantic slave trade. And in fact, there are a few monuments on Wall Street that talk about the cargo, which is us. So that's rare to hear, but I had to start there because that's how I approach it. So applauding you for lifting up the issue means are connecting the dots, as Dr. Wilmer Leon says, connecting the dots to see how, this very, when I was with the Phelps Stokes Fund and I was speaking at Ralph Bunche societies at various colleges, I would lift up a cup of coffee, not promoting Starbucks here this morning, no disrespect to them, or this coconut water that I've been sipping on this morning. Every product pretty much essentially in your household has some type of international point of origin. So if it's the paper on this cup that comes from a sawmill in Ontario, Canada, the creamer in this coffee. I don't do the dairy, but it could be from a dairy farm in Wisconsin. The coffee could be from the mountains of Ethiopia. So you're literally holding a global cup of coffee, I used to say. And let's not even talk about the history of sugarcane and its role in the early slave trade, being probably the most arduous and rigorous crop on slave populations. I say that for a couple reasons. I don't think I'm on a tangent here. You're lifting up the subject, which is great because it's going to educate people on how they're connected to the Congolese, Rwandan peace treaty and the conflict, so-called conflict, and how it impacts our very lives right now to our kitchen tables. And whenever I'm discussing an issue like Congo or Rwanda, I have to start with understanding colonization, post-colonial realities, and a group, a ethnic group of people, a nation state in Africa that was subjugated by a European power, and how they were liberated from that, and how they create sustainability for their economic development, their very lifestyles. So at the root of all of these conflicts, I will argue, being definitely Congo and Rwanda, is natural resources, and how these resources like coltan, for example, is distributed, trade deals are made, and the governmental entities that steward these natural resources factor into the price and the volume and amount that we get as the US or as England or as Brazil. So that's the foundation. And we can come back later and do some other shows on the continuum and the origins of modern day trade situations in African conflict, to give people that maybe don't know a little better context. When they see a news story about Congo and Rwanda, they may know some of the origins, some of the contextual factors that factor in. Because sometimes when you see the report on the news, you're lost because, like, why is the conflict seem to always be brewing there? Well, there's a reason why. And like I said, the coffee in this cup could be a reason why, with those coffee beans. So, so that's my starting point. Just a few points about the peace deal that was done, and then we can toss it up for a nice little quick discussion. But yeah, the 27th, we'll call it the Washington Accords, which, hey, anytime I'm a peace activist of sorts, studied diplomacy, been involved in some public diplomacy and peace negotiations in my day. And anytime peace is made, I rejoice, even if it's an imperfect peace. There's a lot of details of the Rwandan DR Congo peace agreement that are questionable. Again, Senator Mark Rubio, who went over and negotiated the peace deal. There's some questions about the diplomatic acumen of the President Trump team that he sent over there. But at least peace has started, which is really a peace between what is called the M23 rebel group, which is long time rumored or been linked to Rwandan President Paul Kagame, which you have to go back to post-colonial realities in both Congo and Rwanda, which was a tough task for both countries, and how those resources were harvested and distributed and sold becomes very contentious with those former colonial countries. So yes, the June 27th deal was a start. We can debate on whether it was a good start or not. I say any piece is a good piece. Quick aside before we kind of engage in discussion. When I was working at the Phelps Stokes Fund, I got in a little hot water because of a potential connection that I thought was valuable with the Rwandan Department of Tourism in linking the Phelps Stokes Fund with its really not first foray into East Africa, but first modern day foray into East Africa to talk justice and equality of trade, the things that President Kagame was trying to do at the time, which have been controversial. Depends on who you ask what somebody thinks about President Kagame. But I got in hot water because those international situations, particularly on the continent of Africa, are very multi-layered, very tricky, and one really has to be a student of the people and the situation on the ground to effectively help the people in the situation on the ground. So I did get in trouble for that, but I learned a lot from it. We were able to course correct, and we didn't do any. And another quick aside, the Phelps Stokes Fund did have, and I am kind of rambling here, but I'll land my plane here. The Phelps Stokes Fund did have a part to do in the Kenyan airlift, which is the wartime relief effort that got President Obama's father to the United States, where he would meet his President Obama's mother in I want to say graduate school. So we had been involved in East Africa, but I was trying to take us back there. But you have to know the dynamics there before you enter in, and you can't take the so-called ugly American know-it-all spirit and posture into those situations. But like I said, the minerals, the natural resources in those areas directly affect us to our kitchen tables. I hope that gives you a foundation of this situation.
No doubt, no doubt. And when you talk about those dynamics, you mentioned the M23 rebels, which is kind of a variable because though these talks take place, they are not officially tied right to Rwandan government. So it is all these layers of these groups that have to comply, right, to make sure this thing goes through or keeps the peace. And once again, I like how you frame like an imperfect peace. Is it always the best? Because let's in all honesty, we know that when these groups come to the table, there's always right an interest there, right? For those groups that come to kind of facilitate and do the peace talks, and we just hope that in that there will be they will deal righteously so that all can benefit. But back to the essential point you made, the key is getting some peace, to start a consensus of peace, so that they can hash those things out or get to the table. Let me ask you this, because in your work through Phelps Stokes and Ralph Bunche and everything, has there been a strain? Because I know you all were getting grants and funding from U.S. State Department and U.S. Did y'all work with USAID and things of that nature? How much of an impact does that have? Because we know there's a need for resources. They're going through a hunger crisis. With medical care. like just kind of talk about what you've seen and maybe some of the hindrances or difficulties it is, and can these agreements help, I guess, meet those needs?
Powerful question. Powerful question. During my time at the Phelps Stokes Fund, we did work with USAID. We worked more with them in our Learn for Liberia program. Shout out to Leon Collins and Dr. Bedi Foster. Rest in power to him. Shout out to Leon Collins, who's still doing world-changing work to this day. But he led that effort, which was for example, a program that focused on satellite imagery to the women entrepreneurs in Monrovia, particularly Liberia, coming on the heels of 16 years of a vicious civil war in Liberia. So USAID did provide a couple of grants that provided for the transmission of the satellite feed into actually boom boxes. I heard you talk about bringing on technician the DJ, who is a global figure and a cultural influencer, but he's on Rock the Bells Radio. And LL Cool J was famous for his early songs. For you old hip hop heads, you know, he says, "I can't live without my radio." And in our day, it was the big boom box with the double D batteries and all that in there. Well, we were partnering with USAID to actually satellite beam entrepreneurial vocational education programs to boom boxes, because we found that was the most plentiful audio availability in a war-torn context. It's a war-torn context, the same as DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. If you have not been to a war-torn area or region, you really don't know the degree of when the rule of law is shattered and it's the infrastructure is plundered. You're picking pieces of anything you can get to work with to help people. So yes, we did work with USAID in Congo. But to your point, these negotiations, and you said the effectiveness of these programs. There was a book called by Dr. Domboso called Dead Aid, which talked about the ineffectiveness of foreign aid to the people that it claims to try to ameliorate or help, in plain language, and how bags of rice would sit in warehouses on tarmacs for 2 and 3 months, never make it into the interior of a country, and people are starving. But the money was allocated, the bag of rice was sent, but through bureaucratic cholesterol, the aid never got to the people. Too often that's the case. So in a case like DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Rwanda and the M23 rebels, you have, you know, President Tshisekedi of Congo. You have President Paul Kagame of Rwanda at the head of state level. Then you have the titular heads of the rebel group. It's the governmental group you definitely are engaging with. But then there are multinational company leaders that are on the ground there mining resources, refining resources as well. Because when you dig up coltan, when you extract oil, it has to be refined. The plug in the continuum of these countries having so much rich natural resources and profiting off of that found in refinement of the resources. So when you mine raw sweet crude oil, you have to turn it into gasoline. And that process, and you see those plants down west of New Orleans, for example, on the way to Baton Rouge. Those are refineries, and they take crude oil into gasoline. You can't put crude oil in a car. We know that. So African countries have not had means of production like refinement to really profit. So they'll sell a coffee, let's say the raw form of chocolate in a cocoa bean to a Belgian company, and it's not sweet. They'll take it through the refinement, make milk chocolate out of it, sell it back to Ghana for more than they sold it to Belgium for, and they're in a net deficit. So the effectiveness of those programs has definitely not been there. Let me be clear. The programs I worked on, we had some gains. We were able to help some folks, but we would have liked to see much more people affected and helped by those programs, but it is a labyrinth of bureaucracy to get something done, and a lot of racism involved at the indigenous populations. And we did our best to mitigate that. But, international affairs, I'll land here by saying it's not a place really for fire and brimstone rhetoric. You can come off and wax that way, and sometimes that's effective, depends on who's saying it, but it's so many layers to it that to get peace accomplished, to get people fed, most of these countries have literacy rates that are hovering between 50 and 60% because of many political factors. The people are brilliant, gums up the process, and you have a mother tongue situation. Why do I bring up literacy? Because you can actually measure the vitality and the modernity of the country by looking at its literacy rate. Or Western countries, or even Nordic European countries, their literacy rate almost hits 100% every time. 100% of the population is literate, meaning that they can go to a plant and start producing immediately. They can implement things that require reading skills. But when your country hovers at maybe 62%, and or even a 73%, the Northern African countries, that's a huge swath of population that you can't really use to improve the economic development of that country. So you have all of these factors that you're wading through to try to get some momentum and some success with helping people. The effectiveness is below average. Answer your question. And almost never empowers.
And that's
almost never empowers.
Yeah. And that's one of the interesting things, and I wanted you here to share, because many times people don't know the dynamics of these situations and the underlying impact, things that impact how these things happen. Because we look at these nations and you say they're sitting on so many resources and stuff, yet they're struggling. And let's be real, Africa is the only continent where well, I'm gonna say this, it is a continent that they don't have to go anywhere else, right, for resources. They've got farmland, they've got the natural resources, the acreage, right, and got every resource, but we see so much struggle. But in the end, the world, and if we don't think we're not impacted by these things, please, because the world, the conveniences we have, is stabilized. I'm not going to use the word exploitation, but stabilized on how people have benefited from Africa, right? If people don't benefit from Africa, like markets struggle, right? Because they depend on these resources and things like that. But there's so many dynamics, and when you pointed out, like just in refining and stuff, because I know that was one of the battles with when we see what's happening in the Sahel states, right? They had to detach from so many entities, right, to try to begin to develop and refine their own resources so that they can maintain the wealth in their nation. You know, and there's going to be things you're going to have to reach out to. I don't know if it's the proper term. I hate to say this, but more developed nations, right, to do. But the key is being able to capitalize on your own resources, right? Which it benefits your people, which ideally should be the key to capitalism. But I'm not going to get into that debate. But
Yeah.
but you know that's very interesting, and we'll kind of wrap. But because I also want to get more into some of those dynamics in another conversation, but we ain't gonna hold people that long. We know they got to start their day. But just I just want kind of like your final thoughts, because we are also a resource center, and you work with college students to kind of uh, uh, expose them and engage them into this international community, which is something that I think is very vital for our young scholars to engage in, right? So that people are represented, you know, certain demographics or groups are represented on the international stage. But just kind of lay out, you know, what you do with the NCIIE, and just the Model UN, and just engaging young folks into this that may not necessarily be in the political science field, or may have different ideas. Like, how has the work you're doing there, bridging them, how have you seen that flourish? And shout out to WSSU for bringing home the title at the Model UN, correct? I'm saying that because I'm about to be over there doing campus ministry also. So I'm a part of. I'm trying to become a part of the Ramily. But go ahead and just speak to that and the young folks before we close it out.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, yes. Those students did an amazing job, doing a great job at the Model United Nations Conference previously. And shout out to Bennett College, Fayetteville State, and all the colleges that Livingstone College that have participated in the past: North Carolina A&T, North Carolina Central, Shaw University, St. Augustine's University, Elizabeth City State, Johnson C. Smith. They've all NCIE, North Carolina Consortium members, and have participated over the last 38 plus years of existence of this entity, which has exposed HBCU students to study abroad. When I started with the Phelps Stokes Fund back in 2007, only like 3.7% of all study abroad students were African Americans. And study abroad experience is vitally important in the acquisitions of certain levels of jobs that may have a global connectivity, which most corporate positions do. We make up about 12% of this country, but only about 3% of the students studying abroad. So our work was to try to help those numbers go up. Now it's about 5%, which I could attribute that increase to what we did and what the good people at Howard and Prairie View do. But it needs to be getting closer to that 12% of our makeup in this country. So we try to provide, like I said, study abroad opportunities, entrees into global jobs and global decision-making positions for these young students. One of the big barriers to making peace and to helping people across the world is having people that have a sensibility and a love for the people that they're going to be around, and a respect and a spirit, I would say, that is willing to learn as much as you teach. You can't go into the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda conflict and not know, and we teach them to do their homework, like the 1896 Battle of Shanghai. You have to know that that is kind of the point of origin for what we've been talking about today. And the Hutu and the Tutsi conflict that ended up into being the genocide that we all know about. That genesis arguably happens around that 1896 period. This is post-colonial, well, pre-colonial, really, Africa, but many dynamics. So we try to educate students to know about global issues, find their place in leadership in these issues. And let me shout out real quick before you close us out. Speaking of Virginia State University, big shout out to them. And I'm not able to be with my family today up at Virginia State University. My uncle, Lieutenant Colonel Jonah McKee, who was in World War II, the Korean conflict, and Vietnam, one of the few human beings that was in all three of those wars. And like they say, wars have consequences. So even when we're talking war and peace, being in conflict zones also affects your ability to help the population and, of course, make peace. Because one of the more volatile regions in the world that we've known is Congo. And some people suggest that it's directly connected to the natural resources that lie under the feet. I'm going to say one more thing and be done with this. Who we send or who's there making the peace is all important, because you don't know the allegiance or the sensibility of the diplomatic corps. And they may have political agendas that don't position them to make peace. There's a lot of people that we think that are on our side that may not be. There was a saying by a noted scholar that said, when the axe goes into the forest, the trees say that the handle is one of us. So, so yeah, so we could do the math on that. But so yeah, we try. Thank you for asking that. We do try to expose and offer those opportunities to our students. So again, big shout out to Live from the Resource Center for talking about international natural resources and global peace. So shout out to you for that.
And we're gonna have more.
This has been of some help.
Yeah, we're gonna have more discussions. Let me give them this reminder, and before we close out, I'm gonna get to our book, our new book for the month. So let me give them this reminder real quick. Stay right there, Brother McKee.
Yes,
Stay
sir.
right there. Let me give y'all a reminder in case y'all forgot. All right, before we close out, I'm gonna introduce a new book, and I read this doing some graduate studies. So and it was very impactful in motivating me in really, focusing my purpose and some of the things I wanted to do, and just organizing and how to look at the ultimate resource, right? Which is the people. So I'm gonna put this up. And this book is called Social Entrepreneurship. Everyone Needs to Know. David Bornstein and Susan Davis. And I was fumbling through because I was looking for actually another book, but then I said, you know what? This book right here, it's small, not big, easy read, but it was very impactful. And it kind of defines social entrepreneurship. because we kind of just think in it as a product or good for sale, merchandise or whatever. But this one kind of focuses on the people and the network. And this is where I got the phrase from. We talk about non-profits, and we look at that negative connotation of non, right? But you always there's a profit, and it might not be monetary. So they're the ones in this book that coined the term for purpose organization. So you may have heard me say that before. And that's where I pulled this from. I ain't gonna pull out my notebook with all the notes and stuff, but we'll go through it. But it's a book I want to reread just to get motivated in this time, because we have to look to the people and the resources, and if we're organizing and mobilizing, is a foundational step. This is a great book to kind of look at how to structure it, or the thought behind it, or what it is. So we'll dive into that. I'll go through my notes and kind of lift up, because it doesn't just say, oh, it's hunky dory, it's easy. It goes through challenges. It goes through those dynamics of dealing with government versus for-purpose organizations and stuff like that. And it goes through examples that groups have done around the world, as you see in India, and how they made that push with entrepreneurship amongst women and stuff to kind of lift the population. So I want to share that once again. It's social entrepreneurship, what everyone needs to know. David Bornstein and Susan Davis, great book. It's a great starting place. So on that note, Brother Mackey, I appreciate you, man. I thank you for coming through. I want to thank everybody who joined us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I pray you have a blessed Saturday. Be safe. With the weather patterns, we just, we never know. So please, I pray your safety, and that the Creator will watch over you all. So shout out to all of you. Thank you. And then we'll be back on Wednesday. We'll see you then. Peace.